Grant Ramey.
Hey, Coach, the other day you said that you are now a Tennessee Vol. So I kind of going off of everything you've talked about, what over the past 7 years has made Tennessee feel like home to you, the University of Tennessee?
Well, I grew up 2.5, 3 hours from here, just on the other side of the mountain. Hickory's in the western part of North Carolina. We're in the eastern part of the state. And, my wife went to school here. Candy's a graduate of the University of Tennessee. So I did make the trip over here a couple of different times, obviously when we were dating before we were married. But the people here, I mean, I love the people. I love people. And, as I've said before, that we have a tremendous base here, fan base, tremendous loyalty to this university. And it's not just football, it's bad. I mean, I said it, I think our last two games, we've put over 20,000 people in the stands, and we had 4,500 students here the other night. And, you could have seen what went on with our baseball team this past spring and our football team. I mean, with what we've been through the last couple of years and what Josh Heupel has done, and our new athletic director, Danny White. When you think about our Randy Boyd, who's the president of the UT system, and Don D. Plowman, who will be at the game, who used to work at the University of Texas and has two sons that live there. She's our chancellor. We just have tremendous leadership, and it's all about, volunteer. It is a volunteer state. When you get here, being able to get lost in this community, I've gotten so many people that I know with the different things that we've been able to get involved with outside of the university, where it's such a really caring, loving, generous fan base that, again, they love this university and they love the state of Tennessee, and I have fallen in love with it.
Yeah, Rick, VJ Bailey is an Austin guy, and he's coming back here as well, where he's got some ties. But I mean, where is he at with his game right now? What do you need to see from him, and what's the kind of key for him to getting more minutes again?
I've said it many times. If our players pick a player that they love and respect, there's no one more than they respect than VJ Bailey. And VJ has struggled at times. Obviously on the offensive end, and he's a much better basketball player than when he got here. Because he's really learned how to compete at a very high level on the defensive end, and we still think he's going to help us win basketball games. And again, it goes back to consistency. And Mike, with our team, we've got so many guys. Early in the year, you guys would talk to me about our rotation, and it's hard to get a rotation until players start separating themselves in terms of being productive and being consistent. And we're trying to, in some ways, we felt like after the LSU game that we somewhat had going towards a somewhat of I guess, a routine in terms of how we were going to put together our substitution package. But then we play a Florida team that at one time had 5 guards on the floor. And so we had to go small ball. And as much as you might have, or as a staff have all these plans in mind, the one thing I've learned over the year that you have to be willing to make adjustments during the game, and sometimes you have to adjust to what the other team's doing. But VJ's going to play. I mean, he works too hard, and he's too loved by his teammates and the coaching staff because he's not going to quit, and we'll never quit on him.
Rick, you were discussing 2015 and how everything happened. Who did you first hear from Tennessee when that all happened, and what was your initial reaction to that? Them reaching? Actually,
the first person I heard from, I'd heard from some, but the first person that reached out to me and actually said to me, Coach, whether they want you to stay at Tennessee or not, he said, I'm going to give you some advice. And it was my former player, Dickie Simpkins, who I coached at Providence College, who won 3 championship rings with the Bulls and worked NBA, had been around, obviously knew college basketball. And Dickie, I can't remember exactly what he told me about, but it got back to something like, sometimes it's just the right time to leave. And he was telling me that because he had a player that played on his AAU team named Admiral Schofield. And he and I first started talking because when the coaching change was made here, maybe Admiral coming to the University of Texas. And during the course of that conversation, Dickie mentioned to me, and he had some great wisdom. I said, that's really good. And he said, do you know who I got that from? I said, no. He said, you. And he said, you need to take your own advice. But like I said, I love Texas. And I was told one thing one day, next day, I mean, it was all over the place. And just in direct way something, but Dickie was right, it was, and so from that point on, I never did, I did not really talk to the University of Tennessee until probably a couple days before that Sunday. I would think. I spoke with Dave Odom, who was a friend of mine, and he had told me the same thing. He said, it might right now might be the time to do it. And once I got on the phone with Dave Hart and John Gilbert, John's a Lenore Ryan College graduate. We started talking, and again, it was inevitable. But the fact is, I told my players that we talked so much about not quitting and all that. I just didn't think I could quit and just say I'm leaving better, because that's not how I felt. I felt like if my time was up, they needed to tell me it was up, because I didn't want my players to ever say to me, Coach, why would you quit? And that was important to me. And to be honest, they wanted to have one of those real fun press conferences at the end when everybody sits up there and acts like it's a mutual party another way. And I said, I'm not having any part of that. And Mac told me later, he said he wishes he had done the same thing. And so I felt good about that, because it's just the way it happened. And again, I think I've said it before. I think God's in control of all of this, and I think He had plans for me to be here. And but Dickie was the first guy that really, because I didn't even. He knew it. He knew what was going on because of Admiral's situation. He called me first, and we talked about it. And he kind of stayed at it with me for a couple of days and said, "Hey, you really need to think about this." And obviously, when we started talking, it was just a matter of it didn't take very long, because I knew I wanted to still coach. I still felt I had the fire to do that, and knew that we could be successful with the way we do things. And literally when I left that press conference, Don Evans drove me to the airport, and got on a plane and flew right here.
We'll go next to David Pascal and Rob Lewis.
Rick, when you think about this event tomorrow, how much league pride do you have in this thing? I guess you guys are playing the late game. Will you watch other games and pull for your conference counterparts? And I guess a quick second parter, these two leagues actually have a lot of bubble teams in it right now. And do you think, just even if it's just perception and the results of this thing tomorrow, could help one league, advance that cause?
Well, I think you're talking about the two best leagues in college basketball right now. I do. And do I think, yeah, I mean, I think every game you play with the NCAA committee is a resume building game. I do. So the games are very, very important. And when you think about it, two of these games they're going to eventually be members of our league. And, but I do think you got the two best teams in college basketball in terms of watching games. I pretty much have a routine that I do on game day, and some days I might watch a little basketball, other days I won't. It just depends on where I am mentally, where I want to be. But I wish we weren't playing a late game, other than the fact that we won't get back here till 3 a.m. I think we turn around and play, I think Tuesday, and that's a quick turnaround, and it's tough getting back that late because of the time change. But I do think it's good. I've always felt like this, and it started back when I went into the Big 12, and we were talking about a challenge with at the time the Pac-10, I think. And when I was at Providence and they started the ACC Big East Challenge, there weren't enough teams in the ACC to accommodate all the Big East teams, and we got left out a year. Boston College got left out. It's supposed to be a rotating basis. Well, it never got to that point because it seemed like the teams that lower pick teams wouldn't play. And I didn't think it was fair for the players. And so when my first meeting, there was a big talk, Roy Williams was talking about that. And I said, if all of our teams can't play, we shouldn't do it. That's what I wish would happen right now. And obviously we have a different amount of teams. So with that said, I know it's tough to do, and probably instead of, if we continue it, I think it should become more of a bracket buster, and put the best, whatever it may be. But I think all teams have to be in it to be what I would call a real challenge. I really believe that. But do I think it's been good for both leagues to this point? Probably. I think it has. And, from the time that ESPN started talking about this is the time slot they wanted. Remember, it was earlier in the year, but they always wanted it to be in this weekend, and they got it there. And going forward, once Oklahoma and Texas come into the league, I don't know what will happen with the challenge, how it will go down or whatever. But again, a true challenge is when you have everybody in the league playing, and we obviously can't do that.
Coach, Texas has been excellent defensively to this point this season. Just when you're scouting them, what are your points of emphasis to the team?
Well, you're right, Rob. They are excellent defensively. You know, they do a really good job. They try to keep the ball on one side of the court. They're a heavy help team. You drive baseline, they're going to really try to put up a wall there, and they rebound the ball. I think they're a physical team. I thought they played a terrific game the other night, put it together at TCU, and so they've got some momentum, obviously working there. And offensively, they run their motion passing game with a lot of cutting. Within that cutting, they're going to look to, I think, get some isolations where they like to get it on the floor, different areas on the floor. And so, Chris, I mean, he knows exactly how he wants to play. You know, he'll change his defenses a little bit and show some different things there that, you know, obviously we need to be ready for. But again, they play extremely hard, very fundamentally sound in what they do.
All right, thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you guys. See you soon.